So hello, everyone. It is incredibly good to have you back for a second Thursday and to all be together again. And it's also really good to see new people here. For any of you who asked me about a recording, I'm not providing recordings for this until the end, and then I'm going to bundle them up. And if you want to receive them, that'll be on offer. I've never done this before, so I'm making it really, really simple for myself. That's my agreement with myself and with everyone else here. So thank you for that. I also want to thank everyone for showing up on Zoom. And I want to say, I don't know about you, but my body has hit sort of a max capacity with being in front of screens in any way that is extra. So if anyone here feels like turning their screens off and going for a walk or laying on the ground or anything like that, you are completely and totally welcome to experience this in a way where you're having a more analog experience of your own body. And that's something I will probably talk about in greater detail on the last week. Bye, Dan. See you later. So feel free. Also, if you want your screen on and you want to lay on the ground or roll around, we will ignore you. I'm a huge advocate of staying in our bodies rather than being glued to machines. So, and working with machines to better stay in our body. So welcome. I also just want to, as we start this, this particular hour that's about prayer, set a greater intention that the work we do here today support all the prayers in our hearts and all the prayers that are flowing through the collective right now, of so many kinds. I was given an image in meditation a little over a week ago, and it was an image of seeing like the grasshopper. It was an image of seeing our own seeing, your own seeing, as though you were seeing through compound eyes. So an insect, a grasshopper, praying mantis is, and has these incredible eyes that if you can imagine what that's like to see through so many different lenses. And I was seeing that image again coming into this call of holding prayers for ourselves and then holding prayers for this infinite variety of different experiences that are happening in each one of our unique locations in consciousness and on the planet and in the social field. So as we open this call, I want to set an intention to hold in each of us the compound lenses of the many different prayers that are praying themselves through us and through the human collective right now. So let's start there. I'm going to invite us to all pause in meditation for a few minutes and set the field together. And so wherever you are, just ground in your body. And I invite you to soften into your center and close your eyes. And take a few very deep breaths in and out. And as you breathe in, feel your breath filling the inner space of your body, feeling all the way up to the inner surfaces of your skin. So you can feel yourself like a physical object that has these boundaries that you can expand from the inside out with your breath. And then as you exhale, soften your flesh on your bones, just settling into your seat, the place that you're sitting, the asana that you have manifested for yourself right now. And take another deep breath in, filling the inner body, feeling your pelvis, your belly, your rib basket, feeling so much that you can actually feel the aperture of the sutures of your skull expanding, that your skull is actually expansive and the sutures of your cranium are malleable. And as you exhale, soften your skin and your organs and let your skeleton do the effortless effort of holding you up, settling into your spot, your place in yourself, in the universe, on planet Earth. And take one more deep breath in, breathing in, filling the inner body, filling the space inside yourself. And this time, as you breathe in, see yourself filling yourself with light, filling so much that the light moves through your skin and beyond your skin and pushes out into the energetic space that you occupy. And as you exhale, let the skin and the flesh relax and see the inner body condensing into a flute of light. We're going to do a few more of these. Condensing into a flute of light that runs the full length of your spine from your root to your crown, full length of your body from your root to your crown. And breathing in two more times, breathing all the way in, breathing into the inner surfaces of your skin, filling your inner body with light, filling so much that it pushes the light out of your skin and pushes into the space you occupy in the universe, defining your space about 2 feet from your body. And exhaling and letting that light condense into a hollow, luminous flute at the center of your body, clarifying your central energy column. And breathing in one more time, filling up the inner body, filling all the way into the inner surfaces of the skin, filling so much that the light pulses out of you, it pours out of you, it fills your physical and your energetic space around your body, in the universe, on the planet, and exhaling and condensing that light into a narrow flute that runs from the base of your spine to the top of your skull. And stay here for a few more moments, just breathing. Connect that narrow tube of light with a deeper cord of awareness. You could see it as light if you wish, that goes all the way down to the center of the planet, and see all of us wherever we are on places and continents all around the globe, plugging these cords of light down to the center of our planet, and gather earth energy up through that cord, bring it into your space and let it fill and permeate your space, your physical body, and the energetic space around you. Breathe that for a few breaths, and then draw a line of light down from source in the vertical dimension. And let that light also pulse and permeate through your space. And as we did last week, just take a moment to anchor into your sovereign place, your unique and singular location in the universe, in a human body on planet Earth. Own your space by breathing your own love and light and the light of Earth and the light of Source in and through your own space. Cleanse anything out of your space that isn't you. And we call in all energies that are in alignment with this time, this space, this light, this love, and this truth that we are sharing. We call in our field of connection, each of us a unique being, sovereign here on this planet and connected in a unified field of reality. We invoke and invite this space as a space of prayer, a space of listening, a space of learning. And today I invite and invoke the ancestral field that each of us carry, that remembers how to pray in a way that is authentic to the soul, that is authentic to the voice, that is authentic to the body, that is authentic to the earth, and that is true in relationship to Source. I invite and invoke a cleaving through any traditions or narratives or dogmas or ideas that separate us from the true power of prayer, I invite and invoke the true heart and the true voice into this space, and so it is. Welcome, everyone. When you're ready, open your eyes. Thanks for doing that together. Beautiful. So today's topic is prayer, and I'd like to just start by asking the question, what is prayer? Also, as we go, I want to make you aware that there is a chat that you can join, and if any questions come up, we'll open the line for questions at the end, but we're not going to do questions in the middle. So if you have questions that come up during the time I'm talking, you can type them and I may be able to address them at the end, or I may be able to address them as I go. So please use the chat bar for that. What is prayer? What prayer is not in my world is something that is rote or liturgical or dictated by something outside of ourselves. Prayer is an action, and it is an action of using words to connect the center of you to the greater whole. So we spoke last week a lot about soul ecology and the way that the soul sits in the center. Like to come into full residence in yourself is to bring your soul into the center of your body and to incarnate fully in a way that is sovereign, in a way that it owns your space. And so what prayer is the next step of connecting the sovereignty of you to the greater whole. And it is an act and an art of surrender. It's not something you can do from a stance of control. The difference between intention generally and prayer particularly is that prayer is an act of surrender. And it is offered with, like you could say, the posture of trust and curiosity, of being extremely open to the way that the carrier wave of your own true intention and your surrendered intent gets carried back to you. I wrote a lot on the way to getting ready for this class, and was very deeply reminded of this, the experience that you can sometimes experience of praying, of feeling the prayer like a drop that falls into the greater ocean and ripples outward into the whole. And that sometimes you can actually feel its echo returning to you. But there's an action to prayer that is offering yourself from a place of truly harmonized heart into the greater whole, and then allowing that to return. So prayer is a conversation. The word converse, or the word dialogue in Greek actually means to connect using the divine word. So the dia is with or connected to word, and logos is the divine word. Logos is the power of word. And so praying is an act of using words, the power of word, to connect to the greater listening in a way that is a true dialogue or a true conversation. It is a with verse with the universe. And it is something we offer with willingness to be changed. Again, when you go back to the ancient Greek, the whole concept of dialogue is something that happens between two or more parties within which all parties are willing to be changed. So there's an aspect of prayer that is like opening up to being truly willing to be changed, which is part of why when the universe really humbles you and you pray, a lot of times those prayers are answered, because your ego is not in the way of offering that prayer or of receiving the universe's call and response. So prayer is personal. it's first and foremost, this is, I have an amazing teacher in my life who some of you know about. His name is George Gray Eagle Bertelstein. And one of the teachings that he offers is if you don't pray for yourself and take full responsibility for the prayer, the place you occupy, you have no power anywhere else. And I think a lot of times we learn this habit of praying for others and for the world and in the we. And one of the teachings that I've taken a lot of time with and teach myself is that the first thing you pray for is yourself. You make it very personal. That aligns with all the teachings of Ho'oponopono and of Hawaiian shamanism as well, that the only place in the universe that you can actually take responsibility for is your own. So when, in a time like this, particularly where we're deeply called to make very collective prayers, the skill in that is to really start with what of that collective prayer can you actually pray authentically for yourself. You know, help me to be a safe place, help me to be a healthy place, help me to be a place that embraces and accepts death, help me to be a place that can harmonize this virus in a way that allows it to move through me in a way that is good. And it's sometimes really interesting when we're working with prayers and we find ourselves, one finds oneself making a collective prayer to drop the collective narrative, the we narrative, or the help us narrative, or help our planet, or help those people, and just drop it and see how quickly you can make it something that you can own for yourself. And only then to expand to the next layer. Another way to do that is a lot of times we pray for the earth or for rain, is start with what that is for yourself. So if you want to make a prayer for rain, for example, say, thank you for the rain that is coming and is going to land on me. Thank you for the rain that will land, thank you for making it possible for me to dance in the rain. Thank you for the joy of experiencing that. And that, again, that's this amplification of the personal field that takes full responsibility for your place in the universe. Prayer is also an act of coherence. So there's an ancient body of work in Aramaic that's the lost, Greg Braden translated as the lost language of prayer. And in that body of work, to answer Joy's name, it's George Gray Eagle Bertelstein. And if you're interested in his book, it is A Clear and Simple Prayer, is the name of his book on prayer. It's an incredible book that I highly recommend. So the lost art of prayer is the art of praying in present tense. And the essential insight there is that we spoke about a bit last week, is that the only place of power is here, and the only moment here, that's the horizontal, and the only moment of power is now, that's the vertical. And if you pray in future tense, that breaks the power of that cross of imminence. So that includes the language of may I, or may we, or may all beings, which is someone here who's genius with grammar might know the actual grammar with it, but it's a pushing away of the present moment that you can start to feel. So instead of saying, may all beings be happy, you would say, I pray, or we pray that all beings are happy and at peace. Instead of saying, may all beings be healthy, you would say, or may I be healthy, or may we reach the end of this in a way that is, has learned and grown and blossomed into the new earth. You would say, I see us moving through this. God, help us to move through this in a way that manifests a world that works for all. And that's the present tense declaration of the prayer. So when I teach prayer, I invite people with extreme discipline to drop the word may I from the prayer, the word may, because it always lands for me as broken code. And that's true. I know in the Aramaic, I would be very curious to see what it translates as in the ancient Pali, which was the language of the Buddha. So in Vipassana, like all of the prayers are stated, may, dot, 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 may, dot, dot, dot. And it's a habit that has moved through our spiritual communities very deeply. But whenever I hear it, I hear broken code. So, and part of what we're learning to restore through the power of the word as we pray is the integrity of the code of our own language as it pertains to our power in the universe. It's divine law. So that's an invitation for you to explore and defrag for yourself. And as I like to say, I have no need to be right. So this is all part of an experiment in how do we do this more coherently, as opposed to how do we do it right or wrong? How do we do it in a way that is actually more coherent and therefore has a stronger carrier wave? Who do you pray to? For a lot of people, the word God has a really big trigger attached to it. For some of us, it doesn't. And for some of us, we've recovered from triggers that relate with our upbringing. Where I like to sit is as I sit with the word God as an acronym for the grand organizing design, G-O-D. And I find that to be like massively opening for the living perception of all things as divine and all things as sacred, to perceive everything as grand organizing design, which you could perceive it as the matrix. Those things would be synonymous. That from that perspective, God is the all and the everything and the one kind of simultaneously. And so using the word then pertains to my own unique relationship to all of that. And I like to invite that. But if you don't relate to that word, if that word feels like inhibiting or other than awesome, you can pray to source, to universe, to nature, to God, goddess, to that something that is listening. And the last thing about that is there's a way of, in prayer, of actually organizing yourself in the stance of being in conversation with something more than yourself. So again, like that address actually matters. And the language you use needs to feel really true to you. The other narrative that I've been working with a lot lately is addressing the totality, or feeling myself as a part of the totality. So if the grand organizing design is the all and the everything, then the totality is the one, like kind of perceived as a singularity or perceived as a macro object, or a macro verse, as in the wholeness of all metaverses, of all universes in the metaverse. So that's another way of perceiving it or speaking to it that could be useful for you, or perceiving it. I'm in this to invite all of us into direct spiritual perception. So I'm going to try to offer concepts that I've found really useful to my own sensing, because I don't believe in religion. I believe in direct experience. I believe in creating spaces that are supportive of each of us in direct experience. So that's the intention we're in right now. So a true prayer is self-responsible. It is felt and offered from the heart. It is felt and spoken in the present tense. It is felt and grounded in the present place. It is offered free of expectations, requirements, or conditions. And it is offered in highest good for all. I'd like to say a few more things about those last three. So the other guidance I've been getting lately about the nature of human power is that we've radically dissociated from the power of place. I've been doing a lot of research on this over the long term, but in the present tense, I've just been getting very strong guidance about resituating in place and consciously praying from in a way that is physically located in the place on the planet that you are, in the relativity of things. You can locate relative to east, that's the east, and west. You can locate according to the directions, or locating according to that which you relate to in your own place. But that reconnecting to place is fundamental to us reclaiming power and wholeness in the world. Part of my long-term exploration about that is also unpacking how we all carry epigenetic memories of the disruption of our relationships to our places. That original culture was all place-based, and we were all indigenous peoples once. We were all tribal peoples once, and indigenous to particular places. And that there are codes of power that actually are activated when we recontextualize ourselves in our particular places, inclusive of the directions and inclusive of the flows of wind and water and sunlight and heat and cold that are not arbitrary. So there's an invitation in that when you are praying to consciously situate yourself in the place where you are as though you were indigenous to it, because in that moment you actually are. And that is a gateway for opening greater power in the non-local dimension of prayer that connects to everything in non-locality. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense to people? I'd love to see some head shaking on that one. That would be helpful. Smiles are helpful too. It's really good to see you. Awesome. A question about non-locality. That's a great question. It's funny, it's really interesting as I'm speaking right now. I'm having an experience of I think the guides are really wanting me to focus on locality. It's very interesting. So, but non-locally, I mean, a simple example of non-locality is just the reality that we are all experiencing a connection that is also local to our television screens. So like, that's a great, very functional example of non-locality, that we are all in one place and all in each other's places simultaneously is a literal example of non-locality, and that the universe actually works that way all the time. And in the quantum, that there is a entanglement that is true between all things, and that tracks in an entirely nonlinear way that's been very well mapped in quantum physics. And so when you amplify your own place and space and energy and frequency of power, you increase your influence non-locally. You increase your influence in that entanglement. And when you pray about particular things, you can increase your entanglement with those particular things if you are truly in feeling. That was a great question. Thank you for that question. So you could say that a true prayer is felt and grounded in present place. You could also say it is felt and grounded in all place simultaneously. That would actually be true. And that would be in alignment with another teaching that we've been working with, is this cross of incarnation, of being amplifying power that is both horizontal and vertical. I'm not going to get into that teaching right now, but that's the basic teaching. I love your face, Michelle. You're really helping me a lot. So the next bullet point there is that a true prayer is offered free of expectations, requirements, or conditions. So one thing that we do a lot when we pray is it's like you're having a conversation with God, or some animate other that you are willing to talk with, and you're like, I just want it this way. I'll be happy when, and it's the ... conditional statement. And God's not really interested in you being conditional with God. The universe is not interested in us hedging our bets, even though we want to all the time. But prayer, first and foremost, functions according to the same laws of spiritual liberation as any other spiritual practice or any other practice of liberation, which is that you can't get there conditionally. In other words, you have to embrace what is in order to get to the next step. You can't just pray yourself out of something you hate because you will feel better then. So that's a good one to explore when we're really trying to bargain our way out of an experience. Prayer, you can't pray that way. You have to start with what is, and then also be very, very clear with what you're willing to embrace. The last bullet point is that prayer is offered in highest good for all, which is a law of the universal law of healing. Is everything, any seat of responsibility is always best taken when it is taken with the intention to harmonize the whole. So it doesn't work to pray for an outcome if that outcome is not in the highest good for all, which is particularly relevant when we're facing such intense things as we are right now. It's more responsible to pray for highest good for all than it is to pray for something terrible happening to Trump, for example. Because we really don't know what's in highest good for all, but we can definitely make a prayer for highest good for all beings on this planet, or highest good for humanity, or highest good for our family, or highest good for ourselves. That's very effective. So those are the dimensions of making a prayer. It's 3:33. That's really great timing. Accepting, that's a great question. Okay, I'm going to hold that one. Yeah, let's dig deeper onto that one. The question is, I'd love to dig deeper on accepting present circumstances while simultaneously holding a vision for what calls your heart. George, who's one of my main teachers, he likes to say depende, meaning there's not a hard and fast answer to this question. What I want to say, having made a lot of prayers myself and watched a lot of people pray, and this relates to the comment before that about how grief, acceptance is the fifth stage of grief, that we can't pray away something that is part of a cycle, a natural cycle. But we can pray to embrace that cycle fully and then move through it or transcend it. And then the law of evolution is to transcend and include always. It is not just to just pop another layer. It is to actually transcend and include. So in a sense, like what I'm saying is that you have to include before you transcend. And that's something to really listen to otherwise it's a spiritual bypass. It's like, I want to get over this death, or I want to get over this loss. We don't have those experiences for random purposes. Everything that happens to us is something that is by design here to teach and grow and initiate our souls. So that sense is that you have to really get what is there for you before you get to the next thing that is for you. So whatever that is, and sometimes those are the things we really want to push away. So particularly when you're praying with yourself, like the first thing to do is really ask yourself, what is for me to learn here? What is for me to integrate here? What is this trying to show me or teach me? How can I be at peace with this? Help me to be at peace with this. Help me to just be with this. Help me to feel all my feelings about this. Help me to find someone to help me to feel all my feelings about this, because it's really hard for me to do alone. And then to say, and help me to move through them. So there's also a way there that's about being wise in the compound process. Like a compound sentence is a reflection of a compound process that is about integrating our own experiences, fully having them, and then integrating them, and then taking that integration into the next embodiment. Those are great questions. So I'm going to go on. I'm holding the intention with all of these calls to have 15 minutes for questions and comments. So we're not yet to the chunky part, which is the actual grammar of the prayer. Anybody want to hear the actual grammar of a prayer? So super, super simple. This is from George, Great Eagle Bertelstein. Again, if you want to get his book is called A Clear and Simple Prayer. And he published it recently, and it's awesome. The very simple grammar of a prayer is, hey, God, it's me. Dear God, hi, I'm talking to you. So it's an address followed by these three things. Thank you. Help me. I want. And then that is closed, always closed by some kind of, and so it is, or aho, or ashe, or amen. There's actually a close on the end. But what the first piece with that prayer, so I'll go through those a couple times sequentially with more detail. The first piece of talking to God, talking to that thing, is actually not at all random. Because some of us were taught that we were children of God, and to kind of hold this very kind of like innocent, like as though you were permanently immature or permanently naive. And the guidance that came through today was that the stance of address in a prayer is one of authority. It is one of the authority of owning your space in the universe. And it may be one of vastly humbled authority, but that we're actually all locations in God's mind, and that we're talking to that greater mind, that you are talking to that greater mind when you pray, is a point of standing in the wise center of authority of your prayer and speaking to that which is larger than yourself. I could say a lot more about that, but I'll go on. The next piece of thank you, saying thank you, is like, it's the great door opener. It's the great door opener in so many spiritual traditions for a reason. It's because gratitude is a way of coming into a harmonized heart. It's also a way of coming into alignment both with something greater than yourself, the great wholeness of it all, the great oneness of it all, but also the great suchness of it all. And part of praying is not just you and the one, it's you and the everything. Like, we pray because we want a good life in relationship to particular situations, people, and things. And gratitude is a way of opening, again, that non-locality, that entanglement in a place that is most vibrationally and emotionally harmonized. There's been a lot of research by HeartMath Institute and by a lot of other independent scientists that actually shows that the frequency of a coherent heart, a harmonized heart, is the strongest frequency that a human emits in the universe, and is far more impactful and effective than just the mental field, which actually has a much shorter wavelength, or a more less reaching wavelength. I haven't actually returned to that research in a while, but it's really compelling. So gratitude is a way of opening that gate of your coherent center to connect with everything. And if anyone on this call hasn't tried it, I just invite you after this call to like open your mouth and look around you and start saying thank you for things that you actually feel grateful for, including like silly little things like water coming out of the faucet that still works, and cell phones that still work, and the thing that broke that you didn't like anyway, and the laughing kids outside, and the list goes on and on and on. There's another thing that is really amazing about gratitude. This is a little bit distinct from prayer, but that gratitude, praise, and celebration are seen in many indigenous traditions as like the superpowers of a human. It's actually in a lot of traditions, they see the role of humans in the greater ecology of the world as much more profoundly aligned with the act of praise than the act of like making buildings or technology or commerce. That our primary purpose is actually to praise creation. So that's a great mystery that I'm continuing to research, and we're going to actually talk about that in the next call in greater detail. And it's one I want to invite you to explore. Like there's something very non-random that happens when you open the gateways of gratitude. So you start the prayer by saying thank you and saying some praises and some thanks. And then you speak to help, what you need help with. And the grammar there, and this is really precise, is I'm struggling with ... and I need help with. And it could be one or the other or both. But what's specific about this is this, notice this is not saying, may I heal from this rage. There's no vulnerability in that whatsoever. The words help me and I'm struggling with are the seat of true vulnerability. And they're the most unarmored words that a particularly adult human American can say. Because adult human Americans and adult humans from other places too have been taught in really strong ways that grown-ups don't ask for help, that self-sufficient, independent humans don't ask for help. And the reality is that we all need help. So those words are really extremely powerful relative to both other human beings and to the greater intelligence that's seeking to support us. So help me, or I'm struggling with. An example would be, I'm struggling with feeling like I can't connect with people physically, and I need help feeling connected to my physical body and the sensual experience of being alive when I can't hug other people. That would be an example. Another example would be, I'm really struggling with watching all this suffering, and I need help knowing how to be with it and how to respond to it. It's really practical. And the last piece is I want. Sometimes the prayer doesn't actually get that far. It really hangs out with thank you, help me. But the last piece is I want, and like really where that prayer resounds in the universe is when you align that wanting with the very center of what your soul's design is. It's not like, I mean, you can pray for, I want a new car, I want a new home. That's all good. But it's that seat inside of you that is actually really seeking to manifest your own gifts, your own passion, your own love. And it's that wanting that the universe receives with such depth and receptivity. So that's the grammar of the prayer. And the last thing I want to offer before I open up to questions is the space, like the set and setting of a prayer. Prayer can happen anywhere, anytime, any day. So the set and setting is not, there's no requirements on set and setting with prayer. But what what I like to do personally is I like to sit down with a feather and a leaf of sage. There's a teaching in the Lakota way through my teacher George and through his teacher that a leaf of sage, an eagle feather, and a chanupa, which is a sacred pipe, are all equal as instruments of prayer. So it can be helpful to feel into what you want to use literally as an instrument for your prayer, which could be lighting a candle and actually working with the flame to transduce your words. It could be praying out on a cliff and speaking to the greater space. For me, I work with smoke and I work with a feather, and I sit and I hold the feather upright and I burn that leaf of sage, and that leaf of sage carries the prayer on the smoke. And that is part of, that may or may not be part of your path with prayer, but in shamanic traditions, we recognize that the physical is actually part of the transduction of the subtle. And you work with physical objects as part of the amplification of the energies that you're working with, because they're not separate. So that is that. I mean, I guess the last thing I would say is that for me, you can pray anytime, anywhere, any day. For me, it's a part of my morning practice. And I sit down and I pray before I meditate. And I find that often the first part of my meditation is very much as I'm getting quiet, is bound up with the prayer. And then I get very quiet, and then like the greater space opens up in the meditation. And sometimes the guidance that comes back is also in relationship to the prayer. But it's a wonderful way to start your day. And if it helps to have a leaf of sage and an eagle feather or feather, any feather will do. That's also really a good way to make that possible for yourself. You could also create your own altar. You can paint your own altar. There's so many ways to play with that. But creating the setting for yourself that is daily is really powerful. So with that in mind, I'm going to unmute. I'm actually, you know what? I'm not going to unmute you because it could get really loud really fast. What I'd like to invite you to do is, if you'd like to ask a question, to unmute yourself. And we have 10 minutes. I'm going to ask to keep commentary. If there's any commentary that really wants to be shared, to keep it really brief and make space for questions. So please feel free to unmute yourself.
Samantha, I have a question.
Hi, Catherine.
I'm just curious. Yeah, it's Catherine. Hi, Samantha. So I'm just curious about how you've personally been dealing with the crisis and what your day-to-day life has been looking like and how you've been coping, and if there's anything you can share with us to help.
Yeah. It's a good question. You know, there's a part of me, I feel like I'm kind of an unusually prepared person for this, because I've been seeing this coming for so long, and I've been preparing for it for so long. I've sort of been waiting for it. So there's not a lot in me that feels betrayed by it or surprised by it. So I think that there's an aspect of sitting with those places in yourself very rigorously, and recognizing that the world, that the story that our world was built on was a story that was built on borrowed time. Because we have been undermining our own survival for the last many generations, but at an alarmingly fast pace for the last 10 years or so, with full awareness of that. So there's an aspect of spending time with the parts of yourself that were really unwilling to do the math for how your own life and lifestyle and perceptions about personal freedom, meaning like, I can get on a plane and fly anywhere, anytime, but the carbon impacts will be taken care of somewhere else some other time. that there's an aspect that we're all being asked to like really look at that with a lot of compassion for ourselves and a lot of compassion for our own place in a culture that has been uniformly addicted to all these things. And there's this deep calling into voluntary simplicity and in the long term in terms of better systems design that really starts now with involuntary simplicity and sufficiency. Another aspect is this gratitude practice of just watching and being really honest about what comes up that is sucky, and like letting myself have a little fit about it. Like, I am so tired of not being, of like just the fear that is in people's bodies when I see them. I'm so tired. There's a lot of layers. And I'm also lucky because I have a few clients who are paying me very well right now. I'm more economically protected than others. And I know a lot of you are probably going through much deeper challenges than I am financially. But there's so many layers of just like having your fits about what isn't, and then sitting with what is, and like the layers of sufficiency that are supporting you and each of us. And then the practice of doing these practices, it really helps. And for me, it's about prayer coupled with meditation. So I meditate every day. I can't say that every day I achieve meditation because some days are really, really busy and it's just like super fidgety and intense. But the days that it comes through, there's so much guidance and so much light coming in and so much support. And then the last piece is find a way to be busy. And I mean that. I mean, there's a lot of space and time that is inviting us to slow down and pause, but there's also a ton of service that's needed right now. So I think that, I mean, like this call, for example, is super grounding for me. It's not just grounding for any of you. I'm equally grounded, if not maybe more, because I'm taking all this time to prepare for this in a way that's really meaningful to me. So in that sense, find something that you can do or write about or research that you know is on point and on purpose. That is either or both, like is either in service to what's happening uniquely now or in service to the world you will continue to want to build on the other side, or both. Like you specifically are a total psychedelic research warrior. And so like there's plenty of time to go down like massive research rabbit holes and construct well-organized data for other people who could use it, like me, you know. So there's you can kind of choose your own adventure. Like ask yourself the question, what would I do if money was not an issue and I couldn't go anywhere? and figure out a project for yourself. That's really helpful. At least it is for me, because I need to keep my mind busy and I need to feel on point and on purpose. And again, we're actually going to dig into that next week too. So thank you for that question.
I have a question. Oh, I have a question. Are you asking a question?
Joy, go ahead.
Well, first, I totally agree with what you just said, because I'm like busy all the time on the computer. There's this thing and that thing, and it seems like I haven't had a bored minute. But anyway, and then walking, you know. But anyway, so I have a question that was brought up. Two people, or these are two people's posts, and I have a similar question. So I'll just read their two posts. It says, is it true that any prayer that impedes or attempts to influence or change another, even if it's you think good for them, free will, or is it actually black or dark magic? That was one question. The other is, the teacher's mind talked a lot about asking permission for praying for others. Otherwise, she says it's interfering with that soul's highest purpose. What do you think? So I have a similar question, because
those are great questions.
Client of mine.
Those are great questions. firstly, free will is always in effect. So any prayer you make for another is only as powerful as their will for themselves. But the way, if you pray for others, the way I pray is always like, please help this person in a way that is in highest good for them. So,
right, but that's the question. It's like, yeah, even if you're asking for something good for them, are you invading their space? Are you, because they didn't ask for it necessarily.
well, my perception is that prayer is non-invasive. Psychic reading is invasive. I never read into people's spaces unless I have explicit attention and permission. But my perception is that prayer is non-invasive. So praying for the highest good for someone, which is not, it's different than saying,
Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's different than saying, please protect. And actually, it's interesting when I hear it in my own space right now, it's truly up to you. And like, if you are truly in the stance of highest good, you really can't go very wrong with the prayer. But the prayer,
let me give you the specifics, which might make it, why there's a little question in it. It's a client of mine, and he's getting also some energetic healing work. I forget what it is, and from a woman in India. But he's doing it, that healer person is doing it for not just for him, but his wife, who's estranged from him, and he wants the healing of his wife to help his, the whole thing. So I'm like, in the middle of the road to say whether this is good or this is not good. I tend to think it's not so great idea, and yet the healer person thinks it's a good idea.
Well, agendas are agendas. And to go back to the Buddha's teachings, pure intentions lead to pure results, mixed intentions yield to mixed results, negative intentions yield negative results. But what I would say to you is unless is just pull out of the conversation.
Well, that's pretty much I said. I go, you have to decide that for yourself, because he does have an agenda. But is it the agenda she wants? It's for her healing. So how bad can it be? I don't know. So, all right. Well,
yeah. I mean, the same teachings apply. Is if you're simply praying for highest good for all, that's fine. If you're praying for particular outcomes for another, that's manipulation. I also would say that I don't sit with a darker light magic or a darker light kind of narrative. And I think it's kind of time to dissolve those narratives. It's like always the prayer that I hold is for harmonization and the dissolution of polarities. So I've never put a lot of intention on those distinctions between dark magic, white magic, things like that. But usually where it gets funky is when you add in a human agenda. So it's generally just and you're, again, but to go back to some of the rules, you're the only person you can take responsibility for. So then you just get to say, here's what I would take responsibility for.
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're welcome.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Eric.
Hey, sweetie. Actually, it's kind of two questions. One is praying out loud versus praying just with words inside. And the second is praying with witness or with presence of another versus praying solo.
Those are both fantastic questions. And they're actually both things I wanted to speak to. So thank you for asking. Praying out loud in my world, in the way I experience it, praying out loud is really powerful. I have witnessed people praying silently where I can feel the power of what they are praying. And so I wouldn't say don't ever pray silently, but praying out loud has this particular alchemy that is also about literally using your voice in the universe. And that is a thing. When you really ground in your voice, you are truly offering the frequency of your soul into the world. So, and using the power of the word in alignment with your soul as it incarnates in your body. So that's a very powerful reason to pray out loud. And then also praying with two or more. I mean, I like Christ's teachings there, you know, wherever two or more are gathered. I think those are very powerful teachings. And even in this time, it's like, it could be beautiful to hop on a FaceTime or hop on a call and share prayers. And, but I also think that praying between yourself, like when you set space, it has an almost an amplified way of like creating a listening chamber. It's not another person, but it's almost like the increase of the other. So of like sitting up, smudging your space, sitting at your altar, that there is an amplification of the space you occupy there that's not insignificant.
Can I add to that question?
Yes.
So this reminds me of Terence McKenna's talk on the power of the language, you know, how it sticks to the air molecules. And I'm thinking, my question is mother tongue versus the language that you learn later in life. And mother tongue can be associated with all the dogmatic religion, which is my case. But it's a more direct way to speak to my psyche, but I'm a little confused which language to use.
Thank you, Damla. That's such an awesome question. It's for you to feel. And what I've seen with a lot of people is that in the context of psychedelic work, is that often it's like when you're on psychedelics and the default mode goes down, then it's a great time to pray in your mother tongue, because your body knows it. Your body knows it, and your psyche knows it, and your ancestors know it. And it's really, really powerful that way. But then explore how that is if you're praying in the morning, and what part of you really needs to hear that, and what part of you really needs to organize with your own higher self and your least guarded prayer, right? You know, when I worked in Japan, I had a company in Japan for 3 years, and often Japanese would pray and speak about their spirituality in English, because for a variety of reasons, but also because the experience of self is not well expressed in Japanese. Like in Japanese, you can only refer to yourself as this one here. You can't say I in Japanese. So people would pray almost always in English if they could. And even kind of like hang on the translator if they were praying in Japanese, and ask the translator to translate it, because it would have a different resonant anchor point in the self. So it also is linguistically specific. It's specific to which language and why. But I love that question. I mean, some of the most poignant, like bawling prayers I've ever listened to have been in languages I have not understood. So thank you. It's 4:04. I'm going to open to one more question. There was someone with an X in their name who was going to speak earlier. I don't know if that person still has that question. No?
If they don't have that question, Samantha, I'd love to ask one question.
Bring it. That would be great.
The question is about dance and music. What's your interpretation quickly about dance and singing, as prayer, or how would you describe that? Obviously it is prayer. Well, in my world it's a prayer, but how would you describe that in this sort of scenario, and how you describe it?
Fantastic. That's an incredible question. I mean, there's so absolutely, dance is prayer. It can also be praise. It can also be celebration. It can also be right catharsis, right grieving. It can be so many things. This language too can be brought directly into your dance cycle, and you can dance this so powerfully. And some of you may not know, but I founded Dancing Freedom, and I often facilitated classes that went through this linguistically, and you can take yourself through it. Absolutely. Including that place of like, what's so powerful about dancing the prayer is that place of like really being honest about what you're struggling with or what you want is so real. It's so embodied and exquisite. And then like kind of surrendering that into the larger grace that takes you. It's so beautiful. So absolutely yes. Absolutely yes. Thank you. Well, we are going to close there. And for today, it is such a joy to be here with you all. I am so grateful, so incredibly grateful. And thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I look forward to seeing you next week. And please feel free to message me if anything comes up for you. I'll do my best to respond. And I love you.